Hi, my name is Emily Eldredge, and Bawar very kindly invited me to do a Facebook Live video with you all. I was supposed to do it on Friday night, but now I'm doing it on Monday night. It's actually 10 a.m. here in Arizona, where I am right now. So wherever you are in the world, I am so happy to see you, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak with you. Sorry about the echoing in the room. I don't know. I don't have any carpet or anything like that. But anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about is the idea of leadership. Not just leadership, though. Healed, enlightened leadership. This is a leadership for the future. This is a new paradigm of leadership. And to be honest with you, this whole thing about just even learning about leadership is something relatively new for me, only because I think that it's really hard to define, and I'm going to get into that. First of all, who am I? Well, as I said, my name is Emily Eldredge. My company is Emily International, and I am a leader healer, and I'm the creator of the New Self-Empowerment. The New Self-Empowerment, you can go to my website, www.thenewselfempowerment.com, to learn more about that. But the New Self-Empowerment is really all about healing our deep core wounds, techniques for healing our deepest core wounds, so that we can truly step into our power and truly live our truth. And I believe that every single person on this planet, including you, including me, we all have a truth that we were born with inside of us, that is guiding us to be who we came here to be and do what we came here to do, whatever that may be. And I don't necessarily know what your truth is, and I can tell you what my truth is, but the point is mine, yours is yours. We all have ours. And so that's my mission, and that's my purpose as a leader healer, and with the New Self-Empowerment, is to teach people how to heal those deepest core wounds that are getting in the way of us truly owning and living our truth. But I just want to say really quickly that I did not start out this way. I actually started my career after college as an actress and a singer. I've done graphic design. I've worked part-time jobs here and there. I've done a lot of different things over my life, over the course of my life, really trying to figure out who am I here to be and what am I here to do. I really struggled with that. And then finally, what actually happened in my life was that everything fell apart. My relationship ended, and I lost my home, and I didn't have any money, and all kinds of awful things happened, and it really caused me to fall into a deep, dark night of the soul, in which I didn't know who I was. I didn't know why I was here. I was extremely depressed. But it was during that time, surprisingly enough, that's when I ended up discovering the work that I do. That's when I ended up finding my truth. And over time, even more and more, my truth has been opening up for me. Now, I'm sharing this with you because I know that, a lot of you are looking at exchange programs, or maybe you're in different places in your life. And the thing is, at least in the American culture, there's a lot of expectation and pressure that you should figure out what you want to do, and you should know what you want to do and who you're here to be by the time you graduate college. And honestly, that is just not true. In my opinion, or in my experience, and a lot of other people's experience, it's just not true. We're all trying different things, and we don't necessarily know who we're here to be and what we're here to do. And what's interesting is that the reason why I actually struggled so much, I think, with trying to figure that out is because for me, I actually had to create who I'm here to be. I had to create my own thing. So I call myself leader healer, because that name over the years just kept popping into my head and just kept saying, this is who you are. And it was as I was doing my work, and I work with people all over the world, and really starting to, really trying to figure out, sort of my path with my work, I finally realized that, okay, that's who I am. I'm a leader healer. And so that's why with this talk about healed, enlightened leadership, it really is about being a healed leader from the inside. But before we get into that, I actually want to talk a little bit about a conversation that I had with my father a few weeks ago. My father is a wonderful and brilliant man. He has a company in Dallas, Texas. It's called Brigham Hill Consultancy. And he is what's known as a not-for-profit executive search consultant. And so what he does is companies hire him to find leaders for their organizations. So whether it's a foundation or a private school or a museum or something like that, he's the guy that they hire to interview people and talk to people and find who would be a good leader for their organization at that period of time. And so when I was thinking about this idea of leadership and talking to you all, I asked him, I said, so, you work with leaders, you know how to recognize great leaders. He's very, very intuitive. He says that within 15 minutes, he can just figure out how a person thinks. So he's really fast, he's really intuitive. And so I said, so what do you think about leadership? You would know, you work with leaders all the time and you know how to recognize a good leader. And you know what he actually said? He said, to tell you the truth, Emily, the idea of leadership is very elusive. And I was really glad that he said that, because I immediately said, yes, that's why I've been trying to figure this out. It's like some people have different definitions and other people have other definitions. And really though, he ended up saying that different situations, different organizations, different people require different types of leaders and different types of leadership and different periods of life. There's sometimes we need leaders who are very strong and authoritative, and sometimes we need leaders who are a little softer and more kind and caring. So I want to look at that first, and the idea that leadership can be very elusive. There are some people who say actually that a leader is basically anyone with followers. There are other people who say that leadership is all about, someone who inspires people to follow them. The thing is, and I do think that's true, the thing is though, you can have people who are leaders who inspire other people to follow them, but they inspire them to follow them to do not very nice things and not good things. And also there are leaders who can be very manipulative, who know how to manipulate people to have followers. So I think that that's where, I personally have my own, view of what I think is good leadership and bad leadership. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And I also, as we talk about this, I really want you, even if you don't see yourself as a leader, part of what I want to do here is to help you actually recognize your own leadership gifts and skills that you may not even realize are there. Because I think that, no, I'm not going to say I think, I know that historically our world's leadership for the most part has been very, very sick and very toxic and very wounding to humanity. And I think that that's also what I want to dispel is that, leaders somehow have to fit that model of leadership. But in my opinion, that model of leadership that's all about oppression and control and overpowering or thinking you have it all figured out and you have all the answers and you're in charge, I don't think that's healthy. And that's actually going into, so what is bad leadership, in my opinion? Actually, I'll tell you, I'll quote my father. I actually, when I said, what do you think is good leadership? And he said, well, I'll tell you what's bad leadership. He said, Donald Trump. He said, the United States, the current United States president, across the board, is a bad leader. And I'll tell you why. And this is obviously my opinion, but I will tell you why. Because he is not a leader who wants to serve others. He is a leader who serves himself. And in my opinion, a good leader is someone who shows up to serve others. He's arrogant, disconnected emotionally, greedy, self-centered, self-absorbed, manipulative. These are all, in my opinion, aspects of bad leadership. Being distrustful, being reactive, rather than responsive, basically led by ego. And one's ego can, I want to just say really quickly, people in certain circles talk about ego is bad. Ego is not necessarily bad, because sometimes ego can be the thing that really gets us motivated and gets us to take action on things. But when it comes to leadership, bad leadership, in my opinion, is when the leader is leading purely from their ego, from their pure selfish desires, from their pure, basically wounded places. And the funny thing about bad leadership is that sometimes a lot of these bad leaders can actually come across as, well, they're really strong and they're really smart and they know everything and they've got it all figured out, and you just need to do as I tell you to do and I can do it for you, and act like nothing bothers them. And I'm going to tell you right now, pardon me for using this term, but that's bullshit. Straight up bullshit. That type of leadership, where a leader acts like they know everything and that they're the only ones who could fix this, is bad leadership, in my opinion, because it is leadership driven by ego, driven by narcissism, driven by self-absorption. And it's not about actually helping the people they lead to really do what's right and really do what they can do as well, to maybe it's fix a situation or forward a cause or run an organization. So those are just some quick descriptors of what I see as bad leadership. And I think that for the most part, or pretty much a lot of our world's history has been led by this. And the result is often that we end up in struggle and strife and conflict, and people feeling disempowered, people feeling hurt and even more wounded, because there's not that leadership that says you can do it, that trusts us as human beings to really do what we know is right and to trust our own truth and to believe in ourselves. So that is just quickly about bad leadership. Now, what is good leadership then? I mean, you might say it's the opposite of bad leadership. But good leadership, in my opinion, is a balance of, well, first of all, it's knowing that you're not standing for numbers, you're standing for people. That's the way Simon Sinek puts it. It's about caring about people and knowing that whether we're leading an organization or we're forwarding a cause or we're trying to fix some kind of issue in the world, whatever that is, that it's not about us. And it's not about our own selfish desires. It's about serving people. And it's about doing what's right, not just what's convenient. Good leadership is about, it's responsive, it's not reactive. Good leadership, in my opinion, is a combination of thinking about, knowing that you're trying to get certain results, but also caring about people all along the way. Good leadership is being really in tune with the people that you're leading. Good leadership, I believe, there's more heart to it. Good leadership, and this is just general, but I'm going to get into an even higher form of leadership. So these are just sort of general thoughts that I have about good leadership. Now, there's a wonderful book, if you want to learn about an example of, in my opinion, good leadership. There's a wonderful book called Good to Great. And it's by the author Jim Collins, and it's been around forever. It's really a book that's about business, or that a lot of people in business read. But he's got a section in there that's all about what he calls level 5 leadership. And I think that the definition of level 5 leadership will surprise you, and this is why I'm sharing it. Because with level 5 leadership, let me back up. What Jim Collins is talking about in Good to Great is basically, he talks about, if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. But what he talks about is that there are companies who did, they were doing pretty well for a long time, but then all of a sudden they were doing great and they stayed great for a long time. And so he and his team studied this, and they looked at, well, what is it that made these companies that were doing, perfectly okay to all of a sudden they were doing really great? And they looked at the different factors, and one of the factors that they found in all of the examples was what they called level 5 leadership. Now let me just read this to you. So the good to great leaders, this is from the book, never wanted to become larger than life heroes. They never aspired to be put on a pedestal or become unreachable icons. They were seemingly ordinary people quietly producing extraordinary results. It is very important to grasp that level 5 leadership is not just about humility and modesty, because that's what it talks about. Just to say this really quickly, level 5 leadership they talk about is a powerful mixture of personal humility an indomitable will. So in this it says, it's important to grasp that level 5 leadership is not just about humility and modesty. It is equally about ferocious resolve and almost stoic determination to do whatever needs to be done to make the company great. So level 5 leaders are self-confident. Number one, they are self-confident enough to set up their successors for success. Number two, they are humble and modest. Number three, they have unwavering resolve. And number four, they display a workmanlike diligence, more plow horse than show horse. And number five, they give credit to others for their success, and they take full responsibility for poor results. They, quote, attribute much of their success to good luck rather than personal greatness. So I'm sharing that definition from Jim Collins' book about level 5 leadership because I think it's a bit surprising. Remember when I was talking about that we think of, great leaders as they're always powerful and strong and charismatic and all this stuff, but actually when they study it, they actually find that some of the greatest leaders are actually quieter and more humble, and they lead from behind and help support the people to their own success. And as they support those people to their own success, they're actually supporting the organization to a higher success. So I'm saying that because I feel like I'm speaking to some of you out there who may actually not recognize yourselves as leaders because you may not think that you fit that kind of egoic, powerful sort of persona. But that's part of the point of this talk, is I really want to call forth some of the people who may not actually see themselves as leaders, but could have a lot of the makings of really wonderful leadership qualities. And I also want to call on some people who may see themselves as leaders because they do, sorry about that, okay, good, I'm on. Because they do see themselves as leaders, but actually may be a little too reliant on their ego and on their own sort of idea of themselves as I'm powerful and therefore I lead people. Because I think that sometimes that's good and sometimes that plays a role. But also that can be a manipulation tactic unconsciously. That can also be sort of a quality that's not always so good. So I hope you hear what I'm saying here. To kind of sort of turn on its head some of our ideas of leadership. So one of the things that I've discovered in my work as a leader healer and in my work with my clients and also in my observation of leaders is that a lot of times leaders can have this perception that they have it all and they have it all together and they don't have any problems. They're totally chill, they're totally cool, they don't fear anything, they're decision makers, all of that kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now that for most leaders that I know, I'm going to use this word again, it's bullshit. The leaders I know, and I would say pretty much almost all leaders, have some form of inner struggles. They often have wounds that they carry that may be deeply buried, that are part of what's fueling them to behave the way that they do or do what they do. Leaders a lot of times have insecurities that they don't share and they don't show. Leaders can have triggers, things that really trigger them. And the problem, though, is that when we have leaders with these inner struggles, on the one hand, they can do great things. And sometimes they can do great things because they've had those struggles and those wounds. At the same time, though, what we often see is that with some of those leaders that seem like they have it all and they have it all together, something can happen in their lives, or something's privately happening in their lives, like maybe with their families, with their personal relationships, or with their health. They can really trigger those deeper wounds and cause them to make some pretty life-altering mistakes. And the problem is when you have a leader, someone who's in a leadership position, whose decisions can have impact on a lot of people. When that person has unhealed wounds and unresolved wounds and triggers and insecurities, what can happen then is when those get triggered, they can end up making catastrophic mistakes. And so that is why my purpose as a leader healer is to heal leaders. Ultimately, my purpose is to heal our world's leaders and to heal world leadership. So this idea of what it means to be a leader, this how our world is led. And I understand that we have different countries, we have different cultures, we have different experiences. And so we have different types of leaders. But my mission, my purpose and my intention and my mission is to heal our world's leaders and to heal leadership in general. And so I want to paraphrase Einstein here, that the same type of, I think he says, the same type of consciousness that created our current problems is not the same consciousness that will heal it. So I would say that the same type of leadership that created our world's problems is not the same type of leadership that we need to solve them. As I see it, humanity is wounded. We are wounded. We all carry around wounds, unhealed wounds and hurts and insecurities and triggers and blocks and blind spots and all kinds of things that we may not even realize are actually impacting other people, and then can cause us to really live a distorted version of ourselves and show up in ways that we're not truly living our truth. And so my whole purpose is then to heal. So then say, okay, what's going on in there that we can heal those things and create better leadership and be better leaders. You know, one of my things is that I haven't always seen myself as a leader, but I've seen myself as wanting to be someone who can really positively impact other people. And it's always bothered me and maybe it's bothered you too, it's always bothered me when I've seen people who, you know, they seem like they're famous and they're writing books and everybody looks at them and goes, oh yes, you're so amazing, you're so wonderful. And to me, I think to myself, you know what? I really appreciate that person's writing books. I really appreciate some of the things that they're saying, but I can feel they're not totally aligned with that. That's always bothered me. So I know for myself, I've always wanted to be someone who is as aligned as possible with what I teach and how I portray myself. And the truth is, I'm not perfect. I hope I don't portray myself as perfect, because I'm definitely not perfect. But I think it also speaks to one of the really great qualities of leadership is vulnerability. And really showing up and being vulnerable and actually inspiring other people with our vulnerability. Because to me, authenticity is everything. We're really showing up and being authentic. And that's, I think, also one of those things about being a good leader. We don't try to pretend like we have it all and we have it all together. We show up as ourselves and we do our best to be our best selves. And in doing so, we inspire others to do the same. So this gets into what I really want to talk about with, and this is the next to last section of my talk here, and what I want to share with you all. So what I want to get into is not just what is good leadership, but what is enlightened leadership. And actually, I call it guiding star leadership. When you can be such a leader that just by your mere presence, by your mere healed, whole, wise, clear presence, you can change others. You can change the world. You can lead others simply by your example. So here are some of the things that I just want to share about what I see as enlightened, healed, whole, guiding star leadership. I say that a guiding star leader, an enlightened leader, is someone who isn't just led by a desire to serve their immediate people, but also really to serve the world. That it's not just about, well, I'm going to try to run this company and really help people in this company, but ultimately my purpose is to make our world better. That as a leader, that a leader who's an enlightened leader really has that bigger vision in mind. Not just the immediate vision with just their people, but really saying, I mean, even if it's a leader of your family, with your children, it's, okay, wanting to be a really wise, enlightened leader for your children. It's about helping your children, in my opinion, live their truths, really own their truths and live their truths and be as healthy and happy as possible. And at the same time, recognizing their role in the rest of the world and the ability to make our world better. So I believe that a true enlightened leader is one that doesn't just have their eye on sort of the immediate group that they're leading, but really on that higher humanitarian purpose of leading by a pure desire to make our world better for others and for all living beings. So it's not just humans, it's animals, it's our planet, it's the environment. So that's one of the things I want to say. Also, inspiring and empowering others to be their best selves. I've already talked about this, but to be their best selves and to live their truth. Trusting that their truths will guide them towards the highest expression of themselves. As I said in the beginning of our talk, I said that I believe that we all have within us a truth, a higher knowing, a deep knowing of our own purpose in who we're here to be and the impact we're here to have. And that doesn't have to be big. It can be small. It can be the little things we do every single day. Mine happens to be very big. At the same, but not everybody's has to be big. And that's what I'm always about, is really teaching people to trust your truth, trust your inner wisdom and your guidance in your heart. And so that I believe that an enlightened guiding star leader is someone who does that. They trust that everybody has a truth, and their intention is to help people live that truth and trust their own powers and trust their own wisdom. And in doing so, helps to actually support the higher mission of the organization, whether it's for the environment or whether it's, manufacturing things that help people. That's another part. I also believe that an enlightened guiding star leader is very deeply connected. Now, when I say connected, I mean connected within, first and foremost. Really, they have healed their deepest core wounds. They have healed, and they're constantly working on themselves. So that aspect of self-development is extremely important. And I think that's lost a lot of times with a lot of leaders we have today. That a lot of times they're just focused on others, or they're focused on results, or they're focused on numbers. They're focused on just trying to get things to be a certain way externally, without recognizing that it all starts within. And that we can inspire others not just by what we do, but by who we are. And so I see that enlightened guiding star leader as someone who walks in a room and you can just feel their peace. You can feel their wisdom. You can feel their wholeness because of the work they've done on themselves in order to be able to be that in the presence of others. So it's connected from within. And in my experience and what I teach people to do is by connecting within and healing your wounds, you are actually better able to connect with others and be present with others. So connected, empathic, caring, compassionate, wise, intuitive, having a higher sense of purpose through that sense of connection. And this actually, the last part that I put is that really that they are healthy, whole, and balanced from deep within. So the reason why I put balanced in there is because, there are some people out there that say that leadership is just all about serving other people. And yes, I do agree that leadership is about serving others and that as leaders, that's our job. But I think, as I said, as I was sort of touching on a minute ago, is I think that sometimes that can actually then tend to lead people to then never think about themselves and not take care of themselves. And I know for myself, and I'm pretty vigilant about this, and I'm pretty strong about this for myself, that is that I cannot help others unless I am healthy from within. I cannot be here and serve others if I am completely empty inside, if I have not refilled and refueled myself. So to me, that's another part of it, that balance, that it's I take care of myself, and by doing so, I can better take care of and help others. So I think it's about serving ourselves and serving others at the same time, and knowing that as we take care of ourselves, we can better take care of others as leaders. So the question is, how do you become one of these enlightened guiding star leaders? I want to say that I really love the work of Brené Brown, and she has a new book that's called Dare to Lead. And I confess, I have not read the book, but I've heard her speak about this. And so I just pulled out a few quotes that I thought were really wonderful. She says that the barrier to courageous leadership is not fear, it's armor. So the barrier to courageous leadership, and she believes that leadership is best when it's courageous. The courageous leadership is not fear, it's armor. It's the ways that we self-protect. The ways that we self-protect are what move us away from our values. So when we protect ourselves too much, we actually inhibit our ability to lead extremely well. And that's why one of the fundamental things she says that leaders need is the ability to what she calls rumble with vulnerability. That it's all about rumbling with vulnerability. So as I talked about, being healed from within also means having to be really vulnerable, being really honest with ourselves about what is it that we're carrying, what are the wounds we're carrying, what is it that could get triggered or that is getting triggered as leaders that's actually causing us to not really show up fully, maybe causing us to feel more armored or more defended. And when we have that armor and we're more defended, then it does inhibit our ability to connect, doesn't it? So that's why vulnerability is a key ingredient for great leadership. She says that as a leader, we have to invest a reasonable amount of time attending to people's feelings and fears, or else we'll spend too much time dealing with their problems, dealing with with issues that maybe might not have arisen had we just spent a little more time opening our hearts to the people that we lead and being really present with them and honoring how they feel and helping them to figure out, what is it that they need to do their jobs better or to show up more in their lives and in the causes that we're leading. And this is, I love this. She quoted actually a leader of the London School of Economics, and she said when she interviewed him, that what he said was, in the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about brains, but in the future they'll be about heart. And so he's talking about the way our civilization has been in terms of what has work been all about. Before it was about muscles, now it's about brains, technology and all of that. But in the future, it's going to be about heart. And the way he said it was because most likely technology will be taking care of a lot of the things that, we used to have to take care of with muscles and brains. And so really in the future, it's going to be about heart. And leadership will need to be about heart, about providing that sense of human connection that only humans can provide. Technology cannot provide it. I often say this, but your cell phone will never hug you back. Your computer will never hug you back. Your iPad will never hug you back. That right now we look for connection a lot of times through technology, but technology can't hug us back. Humans can. It's about human connection ultimately that we all need and we all desire. So Brene Brown talks about being vulnerable and really dropping the armor that gets in the way of us being truly connected, so that when we're truly connected, that's when we can be better leaders for each other and within ourselves. So the deeper question though too is then how do you do that? How do you heal? Before I get into that, I want to let you know that my guiding principle comes from Conversations with God, another wonderful book. And in it he says, a true master is not the one with the most students, but the one who creates the most masters. And so for me, by that same token, a true leader is not the one with the most followers, but the one who creates the most leaders. So that's always my intention, and that's my intention here today. And that's why I want to share with you that we're talking about healing wounds. We're talking about doing the deeper work so that you can show up more fully in the world, so that you can live your truth and really have the impact you're here to have. And as I mentioned before, that my work, that's what my work is all about. It's about really healing those wounds and honoring your powers so that you can truly know and live your truth. And so with that said, I want to invite you I have a free online program that I'd love for you to take, because it really gets into the nuts and bolts of how do you do that? How do you actually heal your wounds and honor your powers? And this program is totally free. So I just want to make it clear, I'm not sitting here trying to sell something, okay? I could get into it more on this conversation, but really I want you to do your own exploration and use your own curiosity to learn more about the new self-empowerment and how to heal those deeper inner wounds and really honor your true powers. So the online program, it's a really simple URL. It's thenewselfprogram.com. I will put it below. And also, so I want you to take that program, because if you're really truly passionate, I mean, here's the thing, you don't actually have to be passionate about being a leader. You can just be passionate about wanting to heal your wounds, because that's what led me to create the work. I just really wanted to feel better and I wanted to heal. I was tired of feeling so conflicted within and in so much pain and so depressed that's how I created this work. But really, that's then what I share in the program, is I say, here are some of the key tools that I use to help me heal, that I discovered could help me heal. And it's actually helped heal people all over the world. So I really want you, if you're keen on healing your wounds, or even if you're just keen on being a greater leader, I want you to take this program, thenewselfprogram.com, so that you can learn more about how to heal those deeper wounds that are getting in the way of you truly knowing your truth and owning your power and being that leader that you're here to be in whatever way you can or want to. Because that's what our world needs. Our world needs you to heal. As you heal the world. And as you heal, you may actually find yourself ending up in some interesting, surprising leadership situations. So that's exciting as heck for me. I love that. So thenewselfprogram.com, enroll yourself, get in there, take the course. It's totally free. There's no catch, nothing. The other thing I want you to do is also sign up for my daily emails, because my daily emails will actually, I do this thing where every single day I send out an email, and it's some kind of inspiring tidbit or wisdom to really help you trust your truth and really help you recognize also areas where you might not be fully honoring yourself, or you may be putting up with situations that aren't healthy for you, or inspiring little bits that are about how to help you be a better leader. So I really want you to do those things. Now, that's it for me in terms of my presentation. I realize that I sort of left you in this place of getting on the program and everything. But that's because the program really does get into how do you heal those deeper wounds so that you can be a better leader. Okay? Better, not just be a better leader, better human being. I mean, you don't even have to lead, just be a better human being. Because by doing so, it inspires others, no matter what your situation in life. So with that said, I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at some of your questions. I see a lot of comments. Hello, hello. Let's see, leadership. There it is. It depends on the country where you live. I'm not sure what that was a comment about. So who is good leadership according to your opinion? And then, of course, I talked about that. Are the leaders trained people, or are they born as a leader? That is a great question. So actually, Brene Brown, in this recent podcast that I heard of hers, she addresses that. That was one of their questions. Like, are people just born leaders? And she said when she interviewed leaders all over the world about this, she actually asked them, what did they think? And they just said, and their responses were, oh, well, I think people just have it or they don't. She said like 50% of the leaders said that to her. Well, people just have it or they don't. They either have certain qualities or certain leadership abilities, or they just don't. So she took that information, and then she took all of the the things that she'd studied, and found out what were the key elements that were needed to be a really great leader and a really courageous leader. And she brought that back to them and went through those things. And I don't have the list of what those items are. Her book is Dare to Lead. So I confess I haven't read it yet. I've been meaning to read it. I've got a lot of other things I've been reading. But she does cover that, those elements. And that the main one, she said, is rumbling with vulnerability. Really being okay with being vulnerable. She said that is huge in courageous leadership. But she took her findings back to those leaders, and she showed it to them. And then they talked about this whole thing of, whether someone's born a leader or could they learn those things. And she said, every single leader said, oh my gosh, And they went through the list, and they said, I know exactly when I learned this, I know exactly when I learned that, I know exactly when I developed that part of me. So it wasn't that someone's just born a leader. It's that they had certain life experiences from which they learned those particular qualities or beliefs or mindsets. So I hope that answers your question. I think also if you look through history, you'll find that there are so many leaders who we look up to now and we say, wow. And we sort of assume that they were always like that they were always, they always had those qualities. But a lot of times you'll find, no, that's not true. Or that they always thought of themselves that they were going to be a leader. And you find that, nope, that's not true. It's sometimes that circumstances came together for them to realize they needed to step into that and to do that. Or they just felt called to do something and then by default found themselves being a leader of that. And I would say for me personally, I really struggle with this idea for myself of leadership, which is why I think I'm so sort of curious about it, because I don't personally see myself as like, whoa, or I never sort of saw myself as like, I'm going to be this great charge forth leader, but I've always kind of had this idea that I would have an impact in the world. And it's been my own truth and trusting my own truth that has led me to turn out to be someone who others see as a leader. And so that's where I even have some discomfort with it, because there are certain circles in which I run and they see me as a leader. And and I'm kind of like, wow, okay. But really all I'm doing is I'm just owning my truth and trusting my truth and living it. And so that's also where, we don't necessarily have to see ourselves as leaders. We don't have to be like to try to be a leader. Just by living our truth, we sometimes by default are a leader. And in that way, then we're inspiring other people to live their truth and to lead in whatever ways they feel they're called to lead. I hope that answers your question. Great question. So let's see. Do you say Donald Trump is a bad leader? I don't think so, because he has the power to change all the world according to his aims and his wishes. I don't know. Well, that's why I said this is my opinion. I understand there are a lot of people who disagree with me on this about Donald Trump being a good or bad leader. Let's put it this way. You could say he's a good leader by certain definitions, that, he inspires his followers and he gets certain results, and, by those definitions. I can see how you could say, well, he's a good leader because, people listen to him. True. And I did address that in the beginning. I said, yeah, some people can define leadership that way. I don't think that's healthy leadership. I think it's actually, no, let me put it this way. His form of leadership, okay? I'm not saying that someone who gets results and who people listen to is unhealthy leadership. I think that's just naturally part of being an effective leader. But I personally don't think that his approach and the things he says and the way he speaks about people and the way he speaks about Americans, because frankly, he's supposed to be the leader of the United States, and yet the way he talks about a lot of Americans is horrible. And so to me, that's not healthy leadership. That's not good leadership. That's not leadership that's going to inspire people to be their best selves and inspire people to trust their own truths. He has said things like, I'm the only one who can fix it. I don't think that's true. And not only that, he lies constantly, all the time, about almost everything. And if you've been following our politics, and if you've been following the special counsel and things that they're discovering, they've arrested all kinds of people around him who've lied for him, and then he just keeps lying. So I don't think a good leader is someone who lies pathologically, and I don't think a good leader is someone who slanders other people just because of the color of their skin. And I don't think a good leader is someone who creates division and conflict even within his own people, within his own cabinet. Because that's apparently the way he likes to lead, is by actually pitting people against each other and causing more conflict, as opposed to helping people to feel included and valued and aligned. He actually has publicly slammed and slandered his own cabinet members. So I just want to point that out. I would invite you I forgot who said that. Pushtiwan. I would invite you to really step back and say, wait a minute, that might be considered an old paradigm of what people think is good leadership because it seems strong. But if you listen to some of the things that I said about leaders who seem strong, they're often actually led by deep insecurities and wounds and pain. And with Donald Trump, to me, it is just so abundantly clear that he is a deeply fragmented, very sick human being who may seem strong, but he's actually extremely weak. And that's also where I think it's really important for us to really be very discerning, very, very discerning about the leaders that we follow. Not just follow someone because they seem strong or they sound strong or they seem like they don't care about what other people think. I think we have to be extremely wise and discerning in who we listen to and who we follow, and that we check some of the things that they say against fact, against reality, and really look at whether what they're saying and what they're doing is truly with the intention of benefiting us and our fellow human beings, or if we're just kind of looking at it more selfishly in terms of what's benefiting us personally. I personally think that Donald Trump is all about the selfish, narcissistic, really sick, toxic leadership, and it kills me, and it kills a lot of people in my country, and I think a lot of people around the world, that there are so many who really do think that he's somehow strong and he's a good leader. I think that his form of leadership is not what we need for the future. We need more kind, caring, and loving, and compassionate, inspiring, trusting, and wise leaders than him. So there's my answer. I could go on and on, obviously, about this. Being a good leader, even in a simple society, needed to have a good government and educated people, because when you're a good person and having your own ability for leading a group of people, what happened while those people and companions were not educated and are not accepting or helping you for upward your ideas and plans? I'm not entirely, same gentleman who asked the other question or made the other comment. Okay, well, I don't entirely know what you're saying, but you do talk about having a good environment and educated people. You know what? Educated people is everything. Having educated people is extremely important, extremely important. Because remember what I was just saying about being discerning with leadership is, I think that, and I'm we can all sometimes follow people who we shouldn't have followed and all of that. But I do, we all make that mistake. I know extremely intelligent, well-educated people who make mistakes by trusting someone they really shouldn't have trusted, and following someone they really shouldn't have followed. So that being said, education is extremely important, because part of education, I believe, a good education, is it teaches us to be discerning, to not just believe whatever we're told, not just listen to someone because we like their energy, but to really check what they're saying against fact, and to really, really tune in to, well, wait a minute, does this sound appropriate? Does this sound okay? How might what this person is saying, maybe it serves me, but what if it's hurting other people? And education to me is about really having an expanded perception, an expanded awareness beyond yourself, learning about history, learning about the people around you and societies around you, learning things like facts and figures and science and math and things like that, so that you can be less easy to manipulate. Someone who's a lot more discerning in what you see in the world. So I don't know if that addresses what you said, but I do think that education is extremely, extremely important. Leadership and director. What's the difference between leadership and director? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if you mean like being a leader and a manager or a director. I'm just gonna infer that what you're saying is that, let's put it this way. Okay. I think this is what you're saying, that there are different levels of leadership. There are different, well, let's put it this way. There are different titles for leaders, So when you say director, I think of in organizations here in the United States, for example, we have a director of education or a director of development or directors. We also have things like managers, that you might be called a manager. Or even in our government, there are secretaries, there are senators, I think that it doesn't really matter what your title is. I think that it's, no matter what your title is, it's important to really be as good of a leader as you can be. And leadership, I think, is inherent in all of those titles, if you will. If you're a director of some form, you are a leader of some form. You may not be the head, of the organization, but nevertheless, you are fulfilling some form of leadership role. And in my opinion, no matter what's going on above you or below you, your job, I believe our job, or your job if you're in that position, is to be the best leader you can be, according to, in my opinion, the principles that we've talked about today, in this talk. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope so. The features of a good leader, we talked about that. Discipline equals leadership. I don't totally agree with that. I don't, Zirak, when you say discipline equals leadership, I don't think that that's an exact equation there. I think that some leadership might require some amount of discipline. Now, when we're talking about discipline, that word can mean a lot of different things to different people. So, for example, if you're talking about discipline in a family, the idea of a parent disciplining their child versus like a CEO disciplining one of their subordinates, that can mean different things. So I want to be careful with that word, to be honest with you, because I think that sometimes discipline, some people can see it as a very actually violent thing, or like a punishing thing or a condemning thing. I think it's more about boundaries. Recognizing that if someone's violating a boundary, well, there need to be some consequences for that. So maybe a better word might be consequences rather than discipline. So that, for example, if you're the CEO of a company and someone who works for you violates a boundary, or lies about something or whatever, then there can be consequences for that. And I do believe, though, that the best kind of leadership is and actually I once heard this that had to do with parenting, is that I once heard a TED Talk where the woman said that the ideal kind of parenting is actually a balance of being authoritative and attentive. So being authoritative means making it very clear that, we have certain rules and, or I am the boss and, who's in charge. At the same time, being very attentive. So you're attentive to the children. So on the one hand, you're basically letting the children know, like, okay, I'm listening to, or I understand that you don't like this rule, but if you're authoritative, you say, this is why we have the rule, and I know you don't like it, but this is what it's here for, and this is why we have it. At the same time, being attentive means listening to the child's feelings and really honoring like how they're feeling and what's going on with them, so that they can be, more happier in the environment. So a similar thing with leadership is I believe it's you're not a parent. I don't ever want to say that, if you're a leader, you're a parent, because I think that can get into, I don't know, it gets into people's sort of perceptions of what parenting is. But with being a leader, it is a combination of recognizing, what is it that your organization needs in terms of structure and boundaries. And that if somebody violates those boundaries, well, then that needs to be addressed straight on, and there need to be consequences. At the same time, remember we talked about with good enlightened leadership is the type of leadership that really does care about the person and finds out what's really going on here. Because for all we know, you could have someone who makes a major mistake in their job, and you might want to come down hard on them and say, how dare you, I can't believe you did that. But what you might not know is that this person's going through a divorce and they're in a lot of pain and they're missing some details. So in that situation, it might be, okay, you made this mistake. Let's figure this out. There needs to be some consequences, we need to fix the mistake. And at the same time, being attentive and kind with that person and saying, hey, just curious, what's going on? Is there anything you want to share or talk about? And it doesn't mean being the therapist, that person's therapist, but it means showing that you really do care, not just about the results that they bring, but their heart and what's going on with them personally. So that's where I don't want to, get into the, Bawar, I appreciate you're here today. Hopefully I can do more live streams. Yes, I so appreciate the opportunity. You, Bawar, from my experience, are a great leader. You do really wonderful things. So I just want to give you some really props for that. You're so on top of things. You're very reliable. You're very trustworthy, and from what I can tell, you're. I mean, I know you obviously as someone we interact as. You asked me to do these live streams, and we sometimes talk separately. But from what I can tell, you're the kind of leader who you really want to help empower other people. I know that you told me a long time ago, Bawar, that. That there were certain opportunities that were closed to you, that you then made the choice to, you know what, I'm going to let this be open. I'm going to try to make this possible for others. And I think that's amazing. I think that's beautiful leadership right there, where you care so much about wanting to help people that you do your best. You run these pages and groups and things like that, and you do your best to help people really live their truths and realize their dreams. So I just want to honor you for your leadership, Bawar. So let's see. Most of so-called leaders of the 21st century are bosses, right? Please tell us about time management for leadership. That is not something that I'm an expert on. Time management is like a whole other expertise that some people have. But in terms of time management, I would say that, remember I said earlier about caring about others versus caring about ourselves as leaders, is there does need to be a balance for it. Because sometimes as a leader, I think there are a lot of leaders who can end up really burning out because they're just trying to take care of everything else and everyone else. But really the healthiest leaders are the ones who really do set some boundaries around their time, and they take care of themselves. I recently heard, I was so shocked to hear this, I recently heard that the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he literally has like 10 a.m. to like 5 p.m. day every day. And he gets to see his kids off to school, and he has breakfast with them, and he sees them off to school. And then he comes in the morning and he starts to make really important decisions. And then he said, by 5 o'clock, my brain's pretty much shut down. He comes home, he has dinner with his family, he goes to sleep, he gets plenty of sleep, he starts the next day. Now, he's got teams of people around him, of course. But he's also, from what I can tell, he's honoring what his role is. And he's honoring what his roles are, right? Because not only is he head of Amazon, he's got a lot of other projects going on. He's also a father. He's also a husband. He's part of a family. And so what I love about that is it's not, I'm sure he flies all over the world. He's got his private jets. I get that. I get that he has a lot of infrastructure around him to support his ability to do that. At the same time, he could still be the kind of guy who never sees his family, who's always traveling, who doesn't care about his kids, and who's just all about being the CEO and some crazy egomaniac, So I want to point that out, is like, that's someone who obviously he's figured out how to honor his time with his children, honor his children by spending time with them, and honor his role as a father, and honor, his role as a husband and spending time with his wife. So time management, I think, really does come from that place. And I don't know what he's like emotionally. I don't know how healthy he is. But Jeff Bezos, I think what I'm hearing from his story about how he manages to balance his life is that it's when we really truly honor that inner truth, when we are truly healed from within and we're balanced from within and we're healthy, then we can make better choices about how we manage our time, when we might be wasting our time on some things, or when we might be allowing other people to waste and suck away our time, versus when we really need time for ourselves. So I know there are a lot of approaches to time management, and sometimes they're very sort of strict and rigid and, very kind of structured and all of that. I know for myself that the more I've healed from within, the easier it is to truly honor myself and my time. And then when I do that, I actually show up better for my clients and in my work. So I just want to kind of connect those two things, that time management isn't, in my opinion, some kind of rigid thing. I think it's whatever serves you and the roles that you play in your life and what you need to be your best self and have the impact you desire to have. So age is necessary to be a leader. Actually, I think that age can sometimes be an asset in terms of the wisdom that we gain through age. But you know what? There are some kids in the world who are leaders of their own. One of my dear friends is like 15 years old, 15 or 16 now, Haley Thomas. And she is a leader for children in teaching them how to eat healthier. And she's been doing that since she was like 8 years old. And in those years, she's met the Obamas multiple times. She speaks all over the country. She does amazing things. So she is a leader in her own way, and she's only at this point 15 or 16 years old. Now, does she have a lot to learn? She probably does. But I'm just trying to say that, it's not a hard and fast thing. Remember, if you were listening since the beginning, what my father said about the idea of leadership is very elusive. It's not a hard and fast thing. So I think that's where we need to stay a little more flexible with our perception. Very interested in the topic. Thank you. Looking forward to, oh good, yay, Asma. I'm so glad you're going to do the online program. Please, everyone, do the online program. The online program, again, is www.thenewselfprogram.com, and I will put it below when I'm done with this. And then my website is www.thenewselfempowerment.com. So all of that's free, okay? Take the program, it's free. Get my daily emails, they're free, okay? I do that because as I said, my purpose is to heal our world's leadership and also to empower people as much as possible, to be their own masters and their own leaders. So that's why I make it possible for everyone. Thanks for your nice, Adam. Oh, okay. My exact society. Okay, so this is Pashtuan. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. My society, which I lived with, I live in Iraq, and it's not easy, even so hard, for being a good leader here. There are thousands of struggling and suffering for those who have aimed for being a good leadership, political issues, economic issues, security issues, and more problems. Absolutely. I really thank you for bringing that up. I really want to honor that. It's not the same in every country. Everybody has or even for individual people, we all have our own unique situations and struggles. There are people here in the United States who are in really awful situations, of their own. So it's not even about, and then there, of course, in Iraq, you have a lot of struggles and strifes that many of which we don't have here. So, or we have different forms of it here in the United States. So absolutely. Earlier I said that even if the people above you or below you aren't behaving the way you think they should behave or being the leaders that you feel that they should be, that doesn't have to stop you from being the leader you know you can be, from really trusting and honoring your truth. Now, it may be more difficult because you have, if you have leaders or horrible situations of conflict and struggle and strife, that it can be really hard to always be the way you desire to be and feel how you want to feel and show up the way you want to show up and be that kind of leader. And that's understood, okay? No leader is perfect all of the time. No person is perfect all of the time. We have our own struggles, okay? So I would say honor the reality in which you're living while at the same time holding that very strong and clear vision for the world you want to create, for the society you want to create, for the life you want to lead, and you want to live, okay? Doing your very best, knowing that we're all doing the very best we can with what we know, okay? So, confidence is leadership. That's a lot of it. Yes, that is a lot of it. So, any recommended books for leaders? So I mentioned a few. Good to Great, I think, is good. I mentioned Good to Great, I should say. I don't think that's a book that's like, if you want to know all about leadership, you should read that book. But there's a good section, and you can actually find it online. Maybe I can share that link. You can find the section about Level 5 leadership online. So Level 5 leadership, just to kind of help you shift your thinking about what's good, effective leadership. Two of the people I would recommend, and they're pretty forefront right now in really helping us to rethink leadership and to create new forms of leadership for the future. Remember, I was saying the type of leadership that created our problems is not the type of leadership we need to fix them. So we are all about, in my opinion, it's all about really being that new leader of the future, which is different from the leaders we've had in the past. So I would say Brene Brown, let me back up. Simon Sinek. I often quote him, but I don't think I quoted him in this. He's become very well known for his books on leadership, Simon, and his last name Sinek, Sinek. He also has a wonderful TED Talk that's all about why. Start with why. So Simon Sinek, and he writes about leadership, and he has a book called Leaders Eat Last, and I'm in the process of reading that book. Another person is Brené Brown, Brene Brown, like the color, Brown. And she has a new book in the last few months that's called Dare to Lead. And I did quote her in this talk. She talks about vulnerability. She talks about, courage and how to be courageous, and that being courageous is not about being fearless. In fact, she said most of the leaders who are seen as very effective leaders, when she talked about fear, they would, that it's all about being fearless. And they would say, no, it's not. No, are you kidding? I'm scared all the time. I feel fear all the time. But it's what you do in the face of that fear that really is what courage is about. So Brené Brown, again, I will put them below. There are lots of books on leadership. But I think for now, that's just what I'll recommend because they're the ones with whom I'm most familiar. So, okay, anything else? Bawar, replying. Okay. I think that's everything. Is that everything? Should leaders do an MBA? I don't know. I've never done an MBA. My husband did an MBA. I think if it feels like that would help you in terms of your education, then yes. But I don't necessarily think that, again, I haven't done an MBA. Let me just put it this way. I know plenty of amazing and wonderful leaders who've never done an MBA, have never done advanced degrees, and sometimes they haven't even finished college. So I just want to make that clear, that education is extremely important, and I would never deter you from getting more education. But in terms of really being a great leader, the qualities that we've discussed, notice I haven't once said, well, you have to go to an Ivy League school and you have to do this to be a great leader. No, it's really about who you are from within that enables you to be a great leader. And by the way, I just want to say, I see that Mohammed Lamami is watching. He's a great leader. Hi, Mohammed. He's one great leader. I've seen him in action, and Mohammed, he is beautiful in terms of how he supports his people. And it's amazing the team that he's been able to bring together who just love him and trust him, and he loves them and trusts them. And it's not that everything's always perfect all the time, of course, because the challenges are what help us grow, right? But I just want to shout out to you as well, Mohammed. You are a fantastic leader who I know very well personally, and I've seen you on the ground doing your thing. So thank you for being a great example. So I hope this was great. I don't know if you have any other questions or any other thoughts or anything else you need, but you're welcome to put questions below, and I'll do my best to answer as I can. Thank you so much, Bawar. We can do more of this if you want. Maybe there's other questions that you all have that I can then really flesh out, in future talks. Or if you have any other questions, if you're doing the online program, then, go ahead and ask, and we can look at doing that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, I am sending you my love and my deepest heartfelt gratitude. And I really want you to know that I want you to know that you have a truth inside of you, and that your job on this earth is to live your truth. And sometimes that takes time. And it means having to go through challenges, and it means having to deal with some pretty painful stuff. But I want you to know that it's there, and I really, really want you to trust it. Trust your truth, whatever that may be. Because by trusting your truth, you will feel more lit up. And by you feeling more lit up, you will light up the world. And our world needs more of your light. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.